Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, it's September and I turned a new leaf. I've been trying the Simply Snack and chicken flavors. I really enjoyed the black bean and chicken, and also the chicken and cherries. So, stepping out a little bit, trying new stuff. They have tons of great flavors, beef and chicken. And so try chicken this month if you haven't tried it yet. I think you'll be impressed. I really liked it. And I thank them for sponsoring the Symposium for Metabolic Health and also for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. So go and eat some good stuff. Enjoy your day. And thank you again for listening. Hey, everyone. This is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or, medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice, because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hello, and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Gosh, this career is a nemesis for us doctors. These are the people who make our life so challenging sometimes and difficult, but this is a good one. We have a guy, he's like a quadruple threat or something here? PharmD, pharmacist, author,
True.
right?
True.
You do like stand up and gosh, what's the word I'm looking for, man?
Improv comedy. Yeah.
Of course, I was just putting you on the spot to see if you could improv. So your book, I loved it, man. I sat in my backyard, read it with my dogs. They got water all over my book, but it's well worn and tattered and stuff. But I love it. I was reading and I was thinking, man, this is stuff that I really believe in strongly. And so it's great to have like-minded people in medicine where we're saying, how do we help patients? How do we step out of the boundaries we're in? So Cory Jenks, welcome, man. Good to have you.
It's an honor. It's kind of crazy. I was just talking to my wife 3 years ago. I remember listening to one of the first low carb MD podcasts, working in our yard, hearing your voice. And now I am 3 years later getting to talk mutually about things that are important to us, and I think important to the healthcare system that we both agree need fixing, and taking my own weird approach of applying comedy to healthcare and trying to make it better. Because that's what we just want to do, is take care of patients, and sometimes the system makes it really hard to do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think it's so great, like your approach, because like you said, you're type A personality, and then you get thrown into this chaos all the time, and things don't go as planned. And that's what in medicine, like in surgery, things happen and you got to figure out, I've never seen this before. We got to go in and fix this bleed. We had to fix whatever's going on. And in your case, it's kind of the same. I've seen, as a apologist for you, for the pharmacist, I'm astounded. I had one time when I was going on a medical trip, my partner was supposed to send in some meds for me and forgot. And so I had to wait at the pharmacy and all that stuff. But I was observing how rude the people were to the pharmacist, like all day long. I mean, not all day long, but I was there for an hour, maybe. I was shopping, I was at Walmart, and I was like, oh my gosh, like these nasty people are nasty. It's just unbelievable. It's like, I don't make the rules. Your insurance isn't paying for it. What do you want me to do,
Well, we have our magic pharmacy want to fix it, right? So, and it's interesting you say that, because I've thought about this. Like pharmacy, when you go to the pharmacist traditionally, like at a community pharmacy, a retail pharmacy, you're at the end of a long day. Like usually you're sick, you have to call the doctor, you got to wait online to get to the doctor, you go in, the doctor's rushed, it's not your fault. So this is a big part of my book, is empathy. Like I want to have empathy for all sides of this. The patient's upset for waiting so long, they don't feel good. And then the doctor says, I'm going to call this into the pharmacy, it'll be ready when you get there. But the doctor has no idea that there's one technician to help that pharmacist that day. So all you want to do is get better, or your kid's screaming, and you get there and you're told it's an hour, and you're like, the pills are there in that bottle and I want them in that bottle. And so you think you could just put the pills in the bottle. So like from a consumer side of it, I get why I'd be upset. And as a pharmacist, it really stinks, but I also like to have the empathy of, like, I never blame the person for being upset. They're just having a bad day. And at pharmacy, you're at the end of some of the worst days people have. And so you just get that vent up frustration. But yeah, our profession has it pretty rough.
Yeah, and they're annoyed because now they have a high deductible. Now you got, like, last month I paid only $3. Now I'm paying $80. What happened? And they're upset with you. And
yeah,
by the
yeah.
other token of the coin, I've had times where, from a doctor perspective, I like to hear from different people's perspective, because you and I are on different sides of the fence, right? But we're on the same side of the fence too. But I've been so amazed by how unhelpful some pharmacists can be, as far as, like, you call in a med, they go, it's not covered, to the patient. It's like, can you tell them what it is? No, we can't tell them. Like, I had I sent in a generic omeprazole, right?
Mhm.
And it was crazy. That caught the patient, goes, yeah, I want to send the medicine, but it's costing me like $300 a month. I'm like, what? That's generic. Are you kidding? This is back in the day.
Yeah.
But all the brand names were covered by your insurance. I was like, the pharmacist never told you, like, you could do this one? Or, so when I called the pharmacist, I said, hey, how come no one told me? That's not our job. It's not our job.
Yeah.
But when you say, oh, let's see it, like, I would think that you would say, oh, it's $300. Well, here's one that you can get for $80 or $20. Would you want to do that one instead? Right?
Mhm.
It just seems to me like that there may be a logic why you can't do that, but it seems like that would be, being an advocate for the patient.
Probably, and I'm going to guess, is that it's like many burnt out pharmacists at the end of a long day, they just have limited resources, and it's the right thing to do. Yes, would be to find that cheaper med, and they probably were 2 cars in the drive-through giving flu shots. And so, like, I get your perspective, and I'm not trying to be I have a lot of bad things to say. I could say about my profession. I'm one of them, so I get to say it. But
yeah, we're the same way, because I could tell you a lot of bad stuff about my profession too, right?
yeah,
We
yeah.
get it. We know how it is.
So, but I think that gets down to kind of what I wrote about, is our healthcare system is designed, like the title of my book is Permission to Care, Building a Healthcare Culture That Thrives in Chaos. And so permission to care to me means, like, how can we get the administration, the leadership, to just give us the freedom to take care of the patient, to do the right thing for the patient, whether it's find the alternative proton pump inhibitor, for those of you who are not familiar, it's like a different omeprazole like Brian was talking about, or whether it's for us talking more about diet and less about adding medications. Like, why does this have to be so difficult? Like, I had previously trying to get test strips for people who have diabetes. If they weren't on insulin, I couldn't get them test strips. Like, how are you supposed to know what your food's doing to your blood sugar, right? It's really hard to give me that permission to care. And so I will give my publisher 100% of the credit. I wrote 70 bad titles. He's like, brainstorm a bunch of titles. 70 bad titles. And he's like, how about permission to care? I'm like, you're amazing. So, but I think it really captures the essence of what we're trying to do and what I write about, and trying to improve our work environments.
I think that's a huge thing. And when I was reading it, I was thinking that, because I take care of a lot of pharmacists, and every single one of them's burned out. Every single one of them. Every single one goes, as soon as I can get out of this job, I can't stand who I'm working for, and it's miserable. And it's such a hard thing, because you go through so much school, and I'll tell you, I hate to say nice things about your profession, but they've saved my butt a few times, going, hey, doc, are you realize that this could interact with this other drug? Or did you realize, there's a better alternative? Or have you ever thought about this? Or hey, this dose is off, whatever. Sometimes with people in a hurry, like you said, and you go, oh, or my electronic medical record says something crazy, like, leaves out the twice a day on there or something like that. And so a lot of times the pharmacists are so nice and cool and helpful, and sometimes they can have an attitude, so I think, and I think part of the reason is they're dealing with doctors that have an attitude all day long, and so that can be really annoying.
Yeah, and I think that's what gets down to what I talk about. You mentioned, one of my threats I have as an improv comedian, and one of the things improv comedy is, it's a team sport. We're serving the audience and trying to make them laugh. And I think we're bad examples of trying to be bad examples. I think you put the patient first. I try to put the patient first. I put my ego aside. If the doctor has a recommendation that's going to be better for the patient, I don't care. If a nurse notices something that I missed, great. Like, it's in the service of the patient. But too often, I think our different silos or different egos get in the way, and the ones that suffer are the patients, and then also the different professions that are burnt out by trying to deal with the different silos we work with.
Yeah, and I think that's really understanding. Like, I get it, because as a matter of fact, when I first got electronic records, I was like, I can just send it electronically, and I don't have to send it, because I've had time sitting on hold for an hour, 45 minutes trying to call a med, and it's like, I need to get this med, my patient's there. And so, that the system inefficiency is really frustrating too.
Yes. Yeah. The whole idea of creating an electronic record is to try to make it easier for us to do our jobs. And I think that maybe sometimes the people in charge have realized, oh, this is a way to just be a cash register, and we can make them do more work, because we can do it under the idea of, like, well, you're more efficient at it, so you can just see more patients, because now you don't have to write all this stuff out. And it makes the people hide more money, but it gives us, we're the ones that suffer on the front lines. We're the ones that actually take care of patients versus the ones trying to make the rules about what we're doing taking care of patients, which is one of the most immensely frustrating things I'm sure you experience, why you went and have done your own thing.
Yeah, and also, you're what I like when you were drawing the distinction, and I had to look up the definitions too of empathy and sympathy.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell people a little bit about that, why that's so important in what we do.
Yeah, so this is something I will throw my dear sweet wife, who's a nurse practitioner, super smart, blue belt in jiu-jitsu, under the bus. We were having a debate over sympathy versus empathy. Sympathy is when you feel bad for someone, like, oh, I'm so sorry you are sick, or I'm so sorry you've lost a loved one. Empathy is feeling what they feel, kind of putting yourself in their shoes. So when they're feeling it, you're feeling it as well. And I think a lot of times in healthcare, we lose that empathy side of things, kind of seeing things through the prism of the patient, understanding their why or their want. I think one of the examples I might have given in the book, like it all runs together, is a patient who was on a drug that he was insisting that caused him insomnia, and it was metformin. It's like a drug you would not think that would cause insomnia, but I told him, stop it, see if your sleep gets better. And he was like, what? 10 years he'd been telling people it's causing him insomnia. His why, was listen to me. Someone needs to listen to me. So I listened to him and I got him engaged in his care. Like clinically, it wasn't the right move based on his blood sugars, but it got him checking his sugars. So by using, trying to feel how would it feel if you told someone for 10 years you have a problem and to have been told that it's not that thing? Like you'd be so frustrated. So feeling what they're feeling helps, putting yourself in their shoes helps you to make a better intervention and connect with them and get people who are not engaged in their care engaged in their care.
And it's amazing how often we don't listen. As doctors, we're looking at the clock going, okay, we got 6 minutes or whatever, in our profession, in a lot of cases, not my case anymore, but it used to be.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh my goodness, I see it all the time. A new patient comes to me, I'm looking, they have all these problems. I was like, well, this drug causes swelling in your feet and constipation, the amlodipine that you're on, and you're on lisinopril, that causes a cough, and you have a cough. You've had a cough for how long? 6 weeks or 6 months? Oh my gosh, maybe we just stop that. Oh, you get really panic attacks and you're on this drug called glipizide that causes low sugars. Maybe we should stop, like one of the cases I presented at our conference. And you realize, oh my goodness, all you gotta do is get rid of the dang drug sometimes and then people get better.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that I'll sadly hear from patients, and my wife who's done the comedy improv training I've done, I know it's a weird connection, but her patients and my patients will both say, you're the first person who's listened to me. Like, I'm not going to claim I'm the best pharmacist. She won't claim she's the best nurse practitioner, but whatever level of training you have, like you can listen. And I think oftentimes patients come to us and they just want someone that'll listen to them. Like we know that we can't always fix their problems. We know we can't always change their diagnosis, but man, when you listen, it's amazing what happens. And you develop these connections and rapport. And even in 6 minutes, like if you can listen in 6 minutes, you're going to get more done in your 6 minutes, whatever your constraints are. And it's hard because we're trained not to. We're trained to have an idea, look up the patient, look up their background, come up with a plan, do the plan. But when you can sit back and let them just tell you their story, the answer is in what they're telling you.
Yeah, one of my mentors here, he said the most important information you can have is the history. That's going to tell you a vast majority. Now, if you only have 3 minutes, you can't listen to the history that your wife left you and you lost your job and your car got stolen, all these bad things happen, and you have heartburn. Okay, well, maybe it's the stress that you're under right now, and but a lot of times what I find in medicine is people don't want to go there anymore. Like, especially if you're a busy pharmacist, you're not gonna say, oh, you have heartburn, headache, and all these things. Oh, I've seen that a lot of times, and maybe it's your stress level, right? And you have 30 people in line waiting, and you don't have time to talk to them about their stress level, and so that's got to be a challenge also.
Definitely, and I have to say I'm a charmed, spoiled pharmacist. I've worked for the VA for over a decade, and I got to basically function as like a physician's assistant, managing things like diabetes, high blood pressure. So I'd have 20 to 30-minute appointments, so I could get into those histories, and I feel, with someone at your pharmacy counter, it's hard to get at that, right? We have to work within our constraints, but when you have the ability, even in a short period of time, like you say, you find out that there's a lot going on, that they aren't sleeping. Like, your sugars are high. My sugars are high, but I'm eating well, but I'm not sleeping because I'm stressed and I'm having nightmares. Well, okay, you should probably go talk to someone about your nightmares. Like, I can give you more insulin, make your numbers look better, but that's not going to fix what's really going on here. And so as you say, you find out that history, and that is just exceedingly important to figure out what the right course of action is.
And how has that been in practice? What's your interactions been with physicians, and do they feel like you're stepping on their toes when you're changing meds and talking to the patients, things like that?
Fortunately, the environment I worked in was really a great, from a collaboration, a really great environment. Physicians really leaned on the pharmacists because they're overworked. So if I can start someone on amlodipine and send them to the pharmacist and have them adjust the dose and every 4 weeks versus seeing this patient every 6 months, well, we're going to get better outcomes, and I don't have to worry about it as a physician. So when we sell it as we're going to give you less work and we're going to make your patients healthier, or well, we'll say healthier because we do disease state management. What I like doing disease state reversal, but that's another story. So the physicians are pretty on board, and then there's some that would send me a patient because they didn't want me touching them, and that is their prerogative, and their patients can either do better or worse depending, however they want to manage it. That's I can't change people's strong opinions and attitudes, but the ones that leaned on us really appreciated the ability to take something off your plate in the service of the patient as well.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. We have to really divide the labor, and we really have to have someone who can empathize and sit with the patient and talk to them and understand where they're coming from, just to hear the frustration, And I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think this, you may know the stat better than me, but it was how long does it take the physician to interrupt with the patient? And I think it's 6 seconds.
It's like somewhere in like the 9 to 10 second range. And I think the range is like 3 to 230 seconds. And I talk about this when I go speak, but it's like 25 or 30 seconds for someone like a mammal to empty their bladder. So in less time than it takes for someone to pee, you're interrupting the patient. So, and I get it too. If you have 7 minutes, you got to get to your point, but that's a systemic issue, but still it's from a patient, it really stinks too.
Yeah, that's the hard part about it. That's what I really, in the standard practice, that's where I couldn't rectify, was that. It's like, look, I never want my patient to feel rushed, but I also don't want them to wait for an hour to see me. So it's one of those things and I don't want them to have to wait 6 months to see me every year. As a matter of fact, one of my old patients came in, he's a great guy, and he goes, "Hey, I need to get my physical, how many months in advance do I have to schedule?" I go, "Do you want to do it next week? Will you do it next week?" And he was laughing. He said, at my old practice, it was a year out to schedule a physical, a year. So you had to know a year, like you have to schedule at your physical, I'll say, schedule next year's now, today, or you won't get in, because it was so crazy. And you start realizing how nutty our system is and how jam packed and busy. And, and I think the big dilemma that we're looking at is physician burnout, nurse burnout. I mean, the burnout, I was just looking at something on Medscape, and it was like 68% of doctors report they're burned out. You're like, oh my gosh, that means the odds are that your doctor is burned out when you go in to see them.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's sad because we, and then as an organization, they'll do a webinar, they'll do a continuing education on burnout. And they'll say, see, we addressed it. We talked about it. And it's like, well, you got to we're in the world of root cause of diseases and root cause of other things. And you got to get to the root cause of training to be, when I work with physicians, I really respect, you're the doctor. I'm happy to be the assistant. I'm happy to be the pharmacist to do these things, but I very much would draw a line of you're asking me things that you need to ask your doctor because I'm not trained for that. And I want to respect that, respect those positions, the positions and your positions you're in, but you go through so much training, you sacrifice so much of your life to do this. This is a calling. And then you get into it and you're like, this is it. I'm just going to be on a treadmill all day long, turning out patients and writing prescriptions. And it's no wonder. And for those for you who've been in it and left it, it's so obvious, but it's, to me, writing this book, it's like, hey, people in charge, how can you not see this? How can you not get how bad it is and the reasons why?
Well, it's like the analogy you use. I've used that analogy too. We think alike, I guess, because people would ask me how it is being a doctor. I go, it's like being on a treadmill at the gym that's going a little too fast. You can keep up, but you can't sustain this for 20 years. You can't sustain it forever, but it's too fast. And then you're juggling at the same time. That's what it's kind of like. But also, and then you have a lot of responsibility. You can't mess up. You can't make a mistake because, people die. You can't make it. You have to be on. You have to be focused. You have to be sharp. You have to listen. And I think, some of the problems we get into is when you start having people burned out that might be drinking at night. They might be doing other stuff to calm their nerves. They might be taking anxiety medicines to relax. They may be taking something to wake them up, some Adderall or something to get them focused, and you think, wow, we're in a big problem.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't say that my book has all the answers to it, but I think that some of the things I talk about can help us find the humanity in healthcare again. Even if you're on the treadmill, you're feeling burnt out, you can find that why of why you got into this. You can identify the why of the patients. Look, and really, we don't teach this in medical training, in pharmacy school, in medical school, nursing school. All nurses are great empathizers. I'm married to one, so I can say from experience. But we're trained to pass tests. We're trained to memorize things. We're trained to churn them out. And along the way, you forget the importance of being able to like explain it in a way that a patient can understand, to get them to care about it. Like I could recite drug interactions and studies all day long, but to a patient, they just want to know, is this drug going to make me feel better or feel worse? What can I expect, and why should I take it? Right? Gaining that trust with the patient is important too. And the corporate speak is like soft skills, but we really don't teach that. And I think the best, anyone listening, thinking back on your favorite doctors, like they were smart, they were sharp, but I bet you that what you loved about them was that they like treated you like a person and not just like a number going through the day.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is that medicine's become a number. You're there, go sit down in the corner, we'll get to you. Oh, but I'm waiting for an hour for my doctor. Okay, be quiet. He'll get to you. He's busy. They're having a hard day. She's tied up. She had a meeting and so, I was thinking, the other analogy that you alluded to was the drowning. So what they're doing basically is the doctors are drowning, and they go, okay, everyone, pull up. You get on the steps for a couple minutes. You can listen to this talk. Okay, get back in the water. The talk's over. Like, what are you doing? They're not fixing the problem. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Every hospital I know of, they're not fixing the problem. I see people burned out. I see the nurses gaining a lot of weight at night and getting diabetes and not being a pillar of health for their patients, as an example. And you think, well, how do we fix that? How do you make it so the doctor has time to go home and see his wife, or her to go see her husband, or have, I have the weekend off. I don't have to take any calls. I can just relax and shut down for a little while. And the one thing I've learned is the importance of getting the stress under control. It is the biggest killer we have. When you look at all the stuff we're dealing with, stress is an underlying cause of a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll pivot to that with that a bit. I agree. I think stress is number one, but number two, and this is something you talked about at the conference, is now you're seeing patients get better. So what's worse than being stressed, running on a treadmill, barely staying above water, and your patients are getting sicker anyway? Like, you're doing all this work and getting very little. I mean, the chart will stay with the billing will stay you're quote productive, but your patients are still suffering and they're not getting better, right? So I think the two pillars of this is the stress part of it, but also maybe have less sick people, like allow us to do the things that are going to make people actually feel better, right? We got into medicine and healthcare to make people healthy. And for me, I've realized throwing pills at people, like, there's appropriate times for medicine. So I don't want the anti-medicine people to throw tomatoes at me through their phones or whatever they're listening. Like, there's an appropriate time, but if we can find a way, as you say, get at the root cause, the stress, the diet, the exercise, the family, the connection, your patients are going to get better, and they're not going to come as often, and then you're going to work less. Like, it's this kind of like good positive snowball effect there.
You're explaining direct primary care, right?
Yeah.
You're paying me not to see me, really. That's my job, is to keep you from seeing me, really, if I'm doing my job right. So you shouldn't need me as much if I can't figure you out, like, so I think that's a big part of it. But I think, the big, like you said, we go in there, we all went into medicine and pharmacy and nursing to help people. And when you realize no one's getting better, and then you realize, I mean, for me, the big realization, one of the worst days, I mean, it was a worst day and a really good day, because it made me realize something. I heard another doctor, they were doing their billing and said, oh my gosh, this is great news. And I was thinking, what's that? My patient has metastatic liver cancer. And I was thinking, hey, she was in a conversation with someone. I said, and the person said, how's that good news? Do you know what the RAF score is? Do you know how much I get paid for that? Right? Yeah. Because you get paid more the sicker your patient. So if your patient gets diabetes, the system gets paid more from the government, right? So the problem becomes, the sicker you get, the more I make in the standard model. That is the reality it is. So the idea is, well, the sicker the patient is, the more time you have to spend with them to fix all of their problems. I was like, well, the harder thing is spending a lot of time so they don't get those problems. Isn't that a better way to manage our money?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's the perverse incentives, right? We're incentivized to have people stay sick versus having them get better. And I mean, how about that? Throw that on top of your burnout. Like, you've gotten to such a point, and I don't judge this position you're alluding to, but they've been incentivized to have people be sicker to make more money. Like, I don't blame them. It's sad. It's just a sad reality that we've come to.
Well, I think ultimately you lose your empathy and understanding, like, oh my gosh, I'd rather lose a few bucks and have my patient be healthy, right? So you start looking and say, well, I think what happens is people get bought into a system, and then you're a cog in the wheel, and then you have to say, okay, this is the system. And I don't know how many times I go, this is the dumbest thing. I have to fill out all this paperwork and check this box and click this. Yes, I did examine the patient. My physical exam is there. Why do I have to click this little box to get paid? Why do I have to do this? And at some point you go, that's just the way. And I got tired of saying, that's just the system. It's just the system. You just have to do it. It's dumb. Everyone knows it's dumb, but you have to do it. It's like, why do I have to do it? I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Which is great, right? And you've made the sacrifice and the hard leap to do what you do, but and when you present it, I could see it in your face. Like you're full of it's an energizing taking care of these challenges versus the challenges of clicking boxes. And that's, my wife had worked for a large government healthcare system for a while and made the leap to a different company that does lifestyle medicine, and it pays less. The hours are a little bit harder, but you know what? She sees people get better every day, and it's less of a dumb system and more of seeing patients get better. And like that's what keeps her up late at night doing all the hard work. And that's sort of the reason why my own little career pivot as well is to have that opportunity, that freedom to take some risks, to do right by my patients and more often than not.
And you're right. It's not even about the hours necessarily. I work long hours still, not as long, not as crazy, but it's not that constant stress of rushing and hurrying and trying to get on to the next person, thinking, oh, I don't have time to hear about your kids right now. I got to move on to the next patient. It's great they're in college, whatever. So I think those things, but I think it's not about the time that you're working necessarily. It's the stress level and the that you're not accomplishing. So so I have days when I look at my schedule and I go, oh my gosh, everyone is doing fantastic. And I have people that come in, I'm like, what are we doing here? Oh, how's your kids? How's yours? How are you doing? How are you doing, doctor? And we just talk. Yeah. We got time. We're not in a rush and go, okay, you got 30 problems. We got to hurry. We're going to take your top 3 now, and then we'll get to the next ones next month when you come back.
Yeah, those are the most fun appointments. And that's something when I was training students in my last job, talking with patients, we're going to spend I'd have a 15 or 30-minute plan. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about the football game or how their garden's doing or what their family doing, what their grandkids were doing. And in the course of these conversations, we'll talk about your problems and we'll take care of your blood sugars and we'll do what we need to do. But we're talking to you as a human, not just as a patient. And that's really what I've tried to teach the students with me, the residents with me, the other pharmacists is like, if you can have a conversation with the patient, you're going to accomplish much more, because we go back to what we're talking about, just being able to listen and empathize. And those are the fun interactions. We have, it's work, but it can be fun. Healthcare can be enjoyable.
It should be. I mean, we should enjoy it. We should look forward to seeing our doctors and nurses, and we should be able to, when we go to the pharmacy, I know some great pharmacists here in San Diego, and he's just so nice and kind, and he helps the person. Will call me, hey doc, have you ever thought about this? We could save a little money for them, and we could do it this way. I'm like, oh yeah, great, let's do it. But most people don't take the time to really engage with people, and again, like my patients will tell me that pharmacist is so nice. I go in there and they ask about the kids and how's life, and they're not in a rush. And it's a small mom and pop place, and they appreciate the business. So I think there's a lot of things we can learn from slowing down a little bit and saying, okay, how do we make patient loads manageable? I think that the big issue is we have an oversupply of sick people and an undersupply of people willing to help.
Yeah. And it's only getting worse. The more you burn us out, the less people will be there to care. I think, the root of it all is there's so many sick people. It makes, as a human and a citizen, it makes me sad to look at so many people walking around depressed, anxious, sleep deprived, overweight. And it's not a judgment of them. It's just how life has kind of unfolded, and they rely on us. And there's just only so much that you can do, especially when you're in that burnt out model.
Yeah, because you don't have time to address it. You just go, okay, hopefully they don't mention that their husband's a jerk and whatever. It's like, I don't have time to deal with that today. It's a hard thing, and it shouldn't be like that, but we should be able to either have time or we have someone else who can deal with that. Say, hey, let's get you over to counseling. And like you were saying, when you spend those 5 minutes talking to someone, you're doing clinical work, right? Yeah. It's small talk, but you could tell someone's attitude, like, how's things? My first question generally is, how's life? How's things going? Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll start crying right away and go, oh my gosh, it's been one of those times, or whatever, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or other times like, oh my gosh, this has been a great week. And so you can kind of see, okay, they're not depressed, they're feeling well, things are going pretty well, they're sleeping okay. And I could sometimes tell just by looking at someone when I walk in the room, no words said, and I go, okay, this is going to be a rough one, right? Yeah. You could just tell when someone's off, or they're struggling, or they're going through a lot in life.
Yeah. And that's And that's what makes, yeah, I'm not just sucking up to you because I'm on your podcast, but that's what makes you a great doctor, is that willingness to listen. Because so many times I'll speak with patients who say, I went into the doctor and I told them about all these problems, and they just ignored it, right? The person already had, you look at the chart, you do the workup, you have these numbers, you have these labs. It's like, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do this. It really doesn't matter what they say, and we're going to get out of there. And what I talk about in the book and talk about with listening is, like, this works great with patients. We do it with my spouse, is how many times have you been in a conversation, you can tell that person already has an answer in their head. They're not even listening to what you're saying. And it's so frustrating, and you just don't feel heard. It's all about making people feel seen, heard, and understood, both our patients and then fellow providers, fellow healthcare professionals. Because I think that in a system you describe where you're just a cog, you certainly don't feel seen or heard or understood. Because if you were, you wouldn't be dealing with so many problems that we have just talked about.
Yeah, and then not only that, there's also I mean, it's just hilarious to me, but there's always conflict between different specialties. There's conflict between the nurses and the doctors. There's conflict between the nutritionists and the nurse, whatever. There's so many things like that when you start looking at that. There's all this, someone stepping on your toe, and I see it all the time on Twitter. Like just the other day, someone who I respect a lot made a derogatory response about nurse practitioners and how they think they're doctors now. I was like, well, we have a need. The patient has a need. And I have a lot of great nurse practitioners I work with that do way better than the doctor who would do in that situation or whatever situation. But I think we get so caught up in arrogance or, elitism or something like that, that we forget that the patient is the important thing. We're all trying to help the patient.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'll say, that doing improv comedy, where it's a team sport, has really helped dissolve my ego, because you can't really have one person be a ball hog on stage. You can't put one person on the back. It's not like a stand-up where you're just one person in a microphone. And it's really helped me see kind of from a 10,000 foot view of healthcare, of like, oh, when one person tries to be the ego, tries to be the hero, it doesn't go well. And so having that humility to know that we're all human, we're fallible, we're all giving the benefit of the doubt that, this pharmacist is calling me from the pharmacy with the best intentions, even though it can be, our profession can be a little pestering and annoying, and sometimes you don't pick the best hill to die on when it comes to making a med suggestion, but their intentions are good. Even if if I make a suggestion to a doctor and they decide that they don't want to do it, but they listen and say, that makes sense, but here's why I want to do this, I'm good. Like, as long as it's safe, like, oh, okay, that's your perspective, you've done it that way, you heard my suggestion, you don't like it, it's not dangerous, let's move on. Great, we'll move forward, and maybe we'll do it different next time. Like, it does not have to be so hard, yet so often everyone is so offended if someone dares suggest something different than what they've prescribed or done.
Yeah, and I foresee that down the road. I know there's some people, pharmacists working in medical clinics and doing more of the medical aspect of it, helping out of who's going to know better about deprescribing medications. And the funny thing is, when I first started doing this kind of medicine, there was nothing on deprescribing medicine. I would look it up, like, there's no articles on it. Like, how do I get rid of blood pressure? We don't know. We never had to do that in 20 years. Now all of a sudden we have to start doing that. And so, Mark Cucuzella, some of the great leaders we've had in medicine, Dr. Unwin have kind of led the way to say, okay, if we get the insulin under control, blood pressure gets normal around 90% of the time at least. And so you start realizing, we got to be careful, because if we get them too healthy, then the drugs are going to cause a problem. We got to be able to get rid of that. And who better than a pharmacist who deals with these things all the time?
Yeah, and it's been an honor whenever I get the chance. My favorite plan and note is discontinue insulin, stop glipizide, stop all these diabetes meds, stop blood pressure meds. And whenever that happens with the patient, I'm like, you did they'll thank me. I'm like, no, you did the work. This is hard. You did hard work and you have done it. And now you don't have to poke yourself every day. How amazing does that feel? You need to go celebrate tonight, not with like a chocolate cake or whatever, but yeah, but it's the best feeling in the world. Like, I got into pharmacy because I thought medicines would help people, and I still think in the right cases they do. But now the way that healthcare has gone, we're an over-medicated population that, when given the right tools, can get off those meds. And now we need someone that helped them get them off safely. And that's a role that I love playing, and I want to keep playing in my life, because I feel like I owe it to patients. Like, I kind of went through this training on the backs of a booming pharmacy industry, where there was such a need for pharmacists in the 2000s that pharmacy schools have doubled since 2000, because there was such a need for pharmacists. No one stopped to say, is this a good thing for society that we need so many medicines? So now it's a chance for our profession to, I think, do right by patients, and and doing it as a team, right? going to a clinic like yours, getting the right information, going to other organizations that are doing lifestyle medicine, getting them off. Like that is, I think, the future. That's my hope for the future of medicine, is the safety prescribing and then the maintenance of staying off those medicines.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. There is a place for meds. There are some people, they need meds, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and some people aren't going to change their lifestyle. So
Mhm.
in that case, you're going to need the meds. And so, but I think the patient has never, what I'm finding is the patient was never given the option saying, hey, look,
Yes.
we can cut out the processed food, we can cut the sugar, we can get your insulin down, we can do these things, or you could keep doing what you're doing, we'll give you more meds. And
Yeah.
so now I have the option of saying, hey, look, if you don't want to change your lifestyle, the only way to, you're not going to come off insulin by magic. It's going to take
Mhm.
some work. You're going to have to do some exercise. You're going to have to get some sleep and watch your stress and all these things. If you're not willing to do that, then don't waste your money. You can go somewhere and they'll just throw more drugs on you. But then
Yeah.
when you're 82 years old and you're on 35 medicines, you got to understand that that's the consequence of that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that really bugs me, is when I'll tell a patient, like, has anyone ever said, like, you can get off your medicines? And they'll say, well, no, I've just been told diabetes is chronic and progressive. It's like, well, here are your three options. We can cut your stomach out, we can starve you, or we could cut out a lot of these sugars and grains. And as you say, work on sleep, stress, that type of thing. And when patients are given the option, like, they're motivated, they want to do it. And it's not always, as you know, it's not always a linear path to success. But we talk about being an energized physician or pharmacist doing work you love. Well, as a patient, no patient loves taking pills. No patient loves injecting insulin. But those patients love the opportunity to get off those medicines. Like, there's never been a patient that I've seen that says, I love taking my meds. There'll be patients that say, I'll tolerate it because I don't want to change my diet, and that's fine. But the motivation's out there. And I think it's a false assumption from so many providers that patients are unwilling and unmotivated to do it. We've been giving them bad advice for 50 years. They've been doing it. It doesn't work.
Well, and don't you find too, there's a fear. Some people are fearful. They'll go, my doctor said I can never come off that medicine. I was like, really? We're coming off it today. Today
Yeah.
it's done. We're going to make some
Yeah.
lifestyle changes and you won't need it. And then next
Yeah.
day, my sugars might go up a little bit. Then the next day is totally normal and they're off that medicine that was costing them. I have a lady, she was paying, oh gosh, her copay was $400 something for a medicine, like a Invokana type medicine.
Yeah.
And I said, it's dangerous to be on that on a keto diet. We got to get rid of that first day. And she was so stressed, but then her sugars got so great and normalized. And she's like, oh my gosh, why was it? Because that medicines, when you get sugars really high, makes you pee out more sugar, right? So you
Yeah.
go, okay, if I don't have to pee out more sugar and I don't take it in, then why do I need the drug anymore? You don't.
Yeah. And just think of that person. That's like almost $5,000 a year you've saved them. $5,000 a year back into their life. They could travel, see their kids, see their family, give charitably. Like, we don't think about there's the cost of medicines, but there's the opportunity cost of medicines, and what patients aren't able to do because their life revolves around having to pay for all of this stuff. And so we talk, and healthy food is unfortunately more expensive, but you give someone $400 a month, I could give you a meal plan that's going to get you 90% of the way. Like, that's the cool part, is we just switch this little pill out for some healthy food, better food, and you're off medicines, your sugars are better, and you're keeping that money in your pocket and out of the pocket of big pharma there.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I love it. I love when people, you know that feeling of taking someone off meds. Like, you don't need it anymore. Your blood pressure is normal. It's been normal the last 3 trips here,
Yeah,
so let's get rid of it. We'll keep an eye
yeah,
on it, see how things are going. And people are so amazed by that. It's so much fun. So
yeah.
what's your cure for our healthcare system? What's your prescription for us?
My prescription for us, well, I think it's a combination pill, which people like, so you don't have to take too many pills. But I think our cure for our healthcare system is, first, as I said, a big dose of empathy and listening. So listening to the providers and their problems, listening to the patients and their problems, so that we can learn where the root of all these problems are. How do we pay for it? That's a different book from probably a different expert. So I won't touch that one. That one's a controversial one that I don't think anyone has really the right answer for. But I honestly think it comes down to as simple as listening and being in the moment with our patients, being in the moment with providers. And because so much is being done, so much is going on in patients' lives and doctors' lives that are being missed because no one's listening. And it seems super simple, like mind-numbingly simple. But as I said, when I hear that from a patient, or my wife has heard that from a patient, that no one's listened to them, I realize we're missing we're missing the big picture here. And that's who we're here for, and that's our patients.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, huge thing. And not only that, it's like we have to realize doctors are patients too. And
Yeah.
there's so many doctors hurting right now. And I see it. And The last couple of years did not help the situation, and the stress, and feeling like another cog in the wheel, and that you dedicate your life to this. I mean, I know the sacrifice because I've done it. I've spent a lot of times away from the family on Christmas, and I've spent time when I'm on call for 3 days and you don't sleep and all those things. You think, man, I went through all that, and you come out 300, 400, 500, $600,000 in debt, and you're like, I'm stuck now. I'm in this job. I got to make the best of it. And so I think there's so many people in survival mode that they just don't. I mean, I'm telling you, I went through years without downtime, like years, because I wanted to pay my dues and I wanted to show that I was a good doctor and a good, and you realize I could be seeing patients 24/7 and not catch up. I mean, the average, I think the American Academy of Family Practitioners put something out saying, okay, the average doctor would only have to work like 28 hours a day to take care of the patients appropriately. And you realize, okay, you got to be able to go home and sleep, and you got to, but the point was how, I know in my panel I had over 2,000 patients that I was responsible for. Right. And you realize that's a lot of responsibility. If you have 2,000 patients and you say you're working 300 days out of the year in the office, you go, okay, that means I have to do, 8 physicals a day, just in order to do the physicals on the people that need annual exams. And you start realizing, people get sick, they have disability paperwork, they have stress, they have life. And you go, how do you make that? You cannot make that work. So one of the big problems we have is shortage of docs, and healthcare practitioners. And now what's happening is they're just trying to fill in the gaps with anyone they can grab and throw them in there. And some people are totally untrained to be in the ICU and run a ventilator, that kind of thing, because they need a body in there. And that's a big problem. If you're the patient, you want someone who's been there 23 years, they've seen it all, and they know. A pharmacist like you've seen it all. Someone who just comes out of school, no matter how much you haven't had that interpersonal skills, or you don't have the experience of, oh, this drug has caused all these problems. They don't talk about it, but we see it. We know it's happening, Yeah. We're going to have to figure that out, because you don't want a bunch of burned out healthcare practitioners trying to take care of you.
No, you don't. You want someone who's energized, who's excited to come in and see you. And I think that it's a battle to fight. Like, I can't say that every day I go into work, like I feel the best, or I'm the most I'm motivated to help patients, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. Like, we're not at our best every day. We look at our schedule and like, oh my gosh, we have this many patients, and there's 25 voicemails, and there's this and this and this. But if you can, in the moment with that patient, and this is my improv comedy training, like all improv comedy is listening in the moment and responding. So if you can be in the moment with that patient for that 5 minutes, 7 minutes, if you're lucky, 15 or 20 minutes, be in that moment, and you're going to prevent those problems down the road, because you're going to listen. You're going to figure out the issues that's going on with them in the moment. You're going to develop rapport. They're going to trust you, and they're going to, if they trust you, they're going to listen to what you have to say, and hopefully that'll keep them back from coming back into your office too soon with an issue. And I think, again, I mentioned the issue. If you're talking to someone, they're not listening, they already have something in their head. When you're in the moment with that patient, you're right there with them, and you're going to fix it. Like, the answers that you seek to help them are coming out of the patient's mouth, as long as you are listening and willing to be in the moment with them.
Yeah, and that is the killer. Is how do you be in the moment when you're got your back to the patient typing on the computer, right? That's what's happening. I have a patient who just came in, and he said, man, I love you already. We just talked for 2 minutes. He goes, I love you. You're my doctor. I go, why? He said, you're sitting talking to me. I can't believe this. He said, my doctor, I never saw his face.
Yeah.
He was turned around. I saw his back. He's like, yeah. Okay. How's your wife? Yeah, she left you. Okay. Yeah. And I was like, what? There was no empathy, no sympathy, no nothing. It was no connection. It was just like, okay, take this drug. Okay, well, we're going to rectify your drug list. And I got the note. Here you go. And wow, it's pretty amazing that, that this happens, but it is.
Yeah, and even in a situation like that, like my office was set up in the same dumb way. Like, my back was to my patients. So I'd have them come in, sit down, I'd have my laptop behind me, and I would spin around and talk to them and say, hey, I just want to acknowledge, I'm really sorry that my desk is not facing you. So I'm going to do my best to talk to you as much as I can. But if I turn around, I'll give you what my wife says is my best side, and on the back of me. A little joke with them to get them comfortable, and just acknowledge, like, this setup is not ideal. So I'm going to do the best to be in the moment and listen to you and give you eye contact. And then that kind of disarms them, because I know the patients are pretty pissed when they're getting the back of their provider. So I'll just say, hey, I'm going to turn around as much as I can. If I turn back and type, it's not personal. Some dumb person in the government set this up, not me. Blame them. And they're like, yeah, I know, it's all stupid. And so instead of fighting each other, I get them in the same fight as me, as like being upset at the healthcare system instead of at me. And that's something
Yeah.
that we can agree with, is the system is terrible. So
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, and I like that in your book too, is that is saying, hey, look, sometimes you're saying it's the system that's crazy, and like, you know, and so many people go, oh, that's not covered, we can't help you. Instead of saying, hey, let me look into it, let me make a couple of phone calls, see if there's anything I can do on that, and not just blowing smoke, but saying, let me really see if I can, you know, like all the time. Yeah, if someone who's worried about an abnormal mammogram, she wants to get her ultrasound done, and you know, the people at the radiology place go, okay, 2 months we can get you in. It's like, 2 months, please. I mean, this lady's really stressed. Is there anything you could do? Is there, you know, anything you could do to help this lady? And then
yeah.
they're more likely to help. But sometimes those go, it's insane. I mean, I've honestly been practicing 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. I have a patient trying to get into neurology. We did the referral in August.
Mhm.
January 5th, he has an appointment.
My gosh,
What?
that makes me
That's
so sad. Like
It's
that's
incredible. So I call over, I go, this is insane. I mean, this doesn't make any sense. Is there no one else on earth? And so I have to find someone else. I have to find other people, but everyone's pretty busy because of all the backlog of people who didn't get in over the last couple of
yeah,
years, getting their colonoscopies and all that stuff because of the situation we were in.
yeah.
But you know, it takes a toll. And like these
Mhm.
doctors are thinking, man, I'm booked for the next, I can't squeeze anyone else in. I got to go home too. And you know, it's a hard thing. It's really a
Mhm.
hard thing. I have empathy
Yeah.
uh, for people because I know I've done it for so long of how it
Mhm.
works. So, anyways, I think once we all in healthcare start learning how to get along and how, you know, I just had someone on, we were talking a good guy in town, a physical therapist, and
Mhm.
how come you guys are at war with the chiropractors? How come you're at war with these people? And really, a good physical therapist will say, hey, go get adjusted and then we'll work together. And they have people that they work with, that they network, because if I'm not the one, like you said, you can't be the star of the show all the time. You have to say, hey, if I'm not the right one, then let's get someone else who can help you, or let's get a second opinion from someone else who maybe knows more in this area than I do, you
Yeah.
know?
The humility. Like I've told many patients, like, go ask another pharmacist, please. Like if I'm working with them and I'm not fixing their issue, get a different opinion. I would love for you to get a different opinion because I'm not fixing you, but maybe someone else can. And that's it's like, to me, it's just how I live, and it's pretty simple. But a lot of people I found out that is hard for them. I'll use the pharmacy one, hard pill for them to swallow, is
Yeah.
to think that someone else other than them might have the answer. But yeah, and I think that, you know, there's a lot to say about my generation, good or bad, the millennials. But I think one thing in our training has really been emphasized is the interdisciplinary approach. So my hope, and I've talked to several friends of mine from college who went on to be physicians, and their opinion is like, I love my pharmacists, they're the best. I love my nurses. I lead on each other constantly. So I think, and they say, you know, the dinosaurs don't like pharmacy, but they're aging out soon enough. Like they see the value, and quite honestly, like, unfortunately, with how busy the system is, they need to lean on others to do their job. And I'm happy to be that person that they lean on. Like, I don't need to be a pharmacist practitioner or a mid-level provider. I can do what I do to help the team out, take something off your plate. And at the end of the day, if the patient gets better, I don't care if it was you or me or the janitor noticed something about their way they were walking that we fixed. Like, I don't care. Like, let's, whatever it takes, because we are too stressed individually to do it ourselves.
Yeah. And I would tell anyone listening, now this isn't medical advice, this is life advice, is if your doctor doesn't want you to get a second opinion from someone else, start looking for another doctor.
Yeah.
The problem is, if you are that inadequate and that concerned, like for me, it's like, hey, get a second opinion. I know a good doc down the street. You can go ask them their opinion, see what they say. You know, it's
Mhm.
because I think a good doctor is not going to be afraid of getting another opinion unless you're doing really crazy stuff. And you know,
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to know what I'm doing over here in this corner. But you know, usually it's like most of us will welcome it. I mean, I love it when I say, hey, I can't fix your back, but this chiropractor, she's really awesome. I think you know, at least go see her and see what she says and get her opinion, or get this orthopedic surgeon's opinion, or psychologist or whoever it is that they can spend time, and that's their focus. That's what they do. They're the
Yeah.
expert. Like, I don't take my car to the brake guy to fix my engine. I'll take it to
Yeah.
the brake service place, and you know, the tire guy is not going to be, you know, doing my interior. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, yeah. I will even say that even ourselves probably fall into our own patterns, for better or worse, like switching from one healthcare organization to the other within the last week for myself, like realizing that the way that I could practice as a pharmacist could be vastly different, just because homegrown in one system, doing things one way, not right or wrong, not criticizing whatever job I've been in or will be in or have been in. It's just different. And we get into these modes, these cycles, these patterns, and you go and you talk to one other person and see what they're doing. And you're like, I don't agree with that, but that's really interesting. And oh my gosh, yeah, I really could do that. Oh, and all it takes is talking to like one different outside opinion. And you're like, Oh, I learned something, and that's a fun part of life, is learning new ways of doing things. That you learn something new every day if you're doing it right. Maybe two
And
things.
and sometimes you'll go in and you'll say, "Hey, have you guys ever thought this is how we used to do it at my other places? This is have you?" And people say, "Oh, we never thought about that. That's a good idea." So
Yeah,
many times we think everyone is so obvious, and you say, "This doesn't make sense." But I found myself more and more in the standard care saying, "This doesn't. Why are we doing it? This doesn't make sense. Why are we doing
yeah,
this? It doesn't. Certain things just don't make sense." And you say,
yeah,
"Why do I have to? Why do I have to every year all their diagnosis codes fall off, and I've got to put them all back in to get paid again? Why is that?" It doesn't
yeah.
make sense. So anyways, all those kind of things you start learning. When you learn the system, you sit back and say, we've got it. There's got to be a better option. But like you said, the problem is the finances and the money and trying to get people to be, work together as a team. And I know a lot of doctors are trying to make a better system, and they're banding together saying, hey, we could do a better job
Mhm.
focusing on preventive medicine, not focusing on wait till your engine blows up and we'll try to fix it then. I
Yeah,
think that's the problem we've got into. We're really good at fixing engines, but why would you want your engine fixed when we could just change the oil sometimes?
yeah. Well, and I've seen pushback against, not some people push back against the direct primary care model, going cash versus insurance, and how whatever the arguments may be. And my argument against that is like, is the way things were going good, or should we try different things? Because our current system is not, we spend the most per capita, per person on healthcare and getting the worst outcomes. So should we paradigm harder, or should we try something a little bit different? And it's not like everyone's doing it. A few, you're doing it. A few other people are doing it in pockets, trying to like develop these practices. And if this is a better practice, then how can we learn to scale this? Like, instead of
Well,
fighting against it, look at the outcomes. Like,
they
that's
can
all.
they
Have
can
some
fight
curiosity.
they
Yeah,
can they can fight all they want. It comes
yeah,
down to service, comes down to being there for your patient. They call you and say, hey, I have people that they become my patient because they'll call me and I'll call them right back and we'll talk. And they'll say,
yeah,
I call my doctor 5 times, no one called me back. That's malpractice. It's
yeah.
malpractice. Your patient's sick and they call you 5 times. I just picked up a 98-year-old patient because her son was so frustrated. The old practice said, oh, she's got a
Mhm.
cough, send her to the ER. No one would see her, no one would talk to her, send her to the ER. That's not healthcare,
No,
right?
not for a 98-year-old. You're going to a place with a bunch of sick people.
Yeah, and you're sending them to get COVID if they don't have it already.
Yeah.
And so you go, well, heck, we could do better than that. And so I think ultimately people will speak with their feet. Go, hey, is it worth $100 a month for me to go see? So not everyone can afford to do that. I get it,
Sure.
but you look at the standard of care. Like, would you want a doctor that has 2,000 other people, or do you want someone who has 300 patients and you're one of those
Yeah.
300 that they can spend time and they know, oh yeah, I remember your kids in college, and there's some semblance of knowing who they are as people. But
Mhm.
some people in the big systems, they see a different person every time they go, and they have to explain their whole history. I got hemorrhoids. I got to do that. Then you
Mhm.
got to go talk about all this. It's an improv every time.
Yeah.
Like, that's not fun. You want someone who goes, oh yeah, remember last time you had this problem? Remember we did this and it worked? You want to try that again? Okay, good. Okay, we saved a lot of time instead of reinventing the wheel. So yeah, there's so much we can do, and it's not a complaining session saying, gosh darn it, we see the problem, but what do we do? It's like you said, you're drowning. Oh, get back in the water. You're drowning. We acknowledge
Mhm.
you're drowning, but we're not going to, we click the box that we talked to you about it. So we did our thing. If, you can't handle the system. But,
Mhm.
and I think the other thing is doctors and pharmacists, I think, are very, they pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like deal with it. Like, I
Yeah.
remember having conversations with friends all the time saying, I only slept 2 hours last night. I was up all night. I feel great today. And how are you? Oh yeah, I only slept an hour. And last week I
Mhm.
slept half an hour. And it's a badge of honor. I'm
Yeah.
saying, this is dumb. You want to be
Yeah.
well rested and ready. Like, no one's going to go. I mean, well, they do, I guess, go to the club all night before your Super Bowl game. I guess some of these people do. But you think, gosh, I want to be rested. I want to be at the top of my game. I want to be able to help people. And I think if you have happy healthcare practitioners, they're going to do better.
Yeah. That, I
Right?
think you summed it up perfectly there. If you have happy healthcare providers, you're going to get better healthcare. And so how can we get to that happier place? And what I write about in my book, I think, is a little slice of a way of getting in that direction. I acknowledge I don't have all the answers to fix our massive healthcare problems, but I think a little dose of what I wrote about is a good step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's how I see it too, and that's why I love your book,
Yeah.
Permission to Care, everyone. Cory Jenks. The I can't. It's the same thing when I do medical mission trips. People go, well, "How do you handle it?" Because you go there and you can't help everyone. I go, "No, I can only help the people I can help.
Mhm.
That's who I can help. I can make an impact on their life, maybe, but I can't help every single person. But the
Yeah.
ones I can, I can. And that's kind of the thing is people say, well, if you're not doing standard care, then you're, so if you're only seeing 300 instead of 3,000 patients, then you're not I go, if you're seeing 3,000, you're not providing the care. You're not doing anyone a benefit. You're
No,
not. You're
Yeah.
really not. If you're burned out and stressed out every day and you can't go home and sleep and you're not benefiting. And I believe that I go, I'll just work harder and harder. I'll just work harder. I'll be more efficient. So I was working so hard at being more efficient. Then I realized I have to be so efficient that I can't talk to my patient anymore. It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. Doesn't,
Yeah.
you're not going to help anyone.
That's no fun. And that's, life's too short to not enjoy it. Even at work, even in a life or death job, you can enjoy it and have fun and find meaning with who you take care of and who you take care of them with.
So Cory, I got to put you on the spot. Since
Okay.
this is life's best medicine. What's
It
life's
is.
best medicine for you? Where do you go when everything's rough? What gets you through the hard days?
Okay.
What really matters in life, all the important stuff.
Well, I'm a comedian, so the road answer would be laughter is the best medicine. And it's a great medicine, but it's not always the right medicine. And so I think for me, it's really about nurturing the relationships that energize you, focusing on what you can control. As an improviser, I don't know what the person across me is going to say, but I can learn how to respond. I can control how I respond. So letting go of that control. And then I will say laughing at the absurd realities of the world really helps me too. Like sometimes, over a decade in the government, you just have to you could get angry or you could laugh. And I just choose to go the laughter route, because great comedy is just heightening the absurdities of everyday life. You look at what's crazy one day, it's an Onion headline one day, and the next day it's the headline in the news. So you can't beat reality for comedy. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I think so too. I have to look as is that real? That's not real. Is that real? Really, it's real. It's amazing. And so those kind of things you can't, and I agree with you, go through, you can't get too worked up, change what you can. If things are really, obviously dramatically bad, you try to, do anything you can to help it. But sometimes you just have to smile and say, wow, that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Like all you can do is
Yes.
make fun of it and go, okay, I got to move on. I can't waste any more brain cells on this issue that's not going to get fixed.
Exactly. Yeah. Let go and laugh at it, because it's like trying to fix 3,000 people, trying to fix all the problems of the world are just going to leave you angry and burnt out. So
yeah, help the people you can,
mm-hmm.
and just smile to yourself when you stop the meds that they said they could never stop, all those kind of good things. So I'm honored to share medicine with you and what you're doing and trying to help the system out, and laughing and improvising and making the best out of a broken system is really what it is.
I think that's a great tagline to my book, making the best out of a broken system. I can't put any better than that.
Do I get royalties or something, man?
Not until I get some.
All right. I know that's the problem. So if people are interested in your book, if people are running a hospital and they want to know how to better treat their staff and all that kind of stuff, how do they track you down? How do they get your book?
Yeah, so if you just go to CoryJenks.com, it's CORY. My parents were cheap, didn't buy the E, so it's CORYJENKS.com. You can find out all about the talks I do. I go work with groups and teach improv to healthcare professionals. So we go, we laugh together, we share, we learn a lot, we smile, making the best of a broken system, if you will, learn how to empathize and think together. From there, you can get my book's on Amazon. It's a little retailer, maybe you've heard of it.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
They've sold a couple of books before. And then I also recently started a newsletter on Substack called Get Through Your Shift. And it's a thrice weekly dose of knowledge, wisdom, and humor to help healthcare professionals get through their shift. So I used to roll into work, be stressed, worried, and get on social media and only further exacerbate the issue. I was a duty as pharmacist, so I get there a little bit early. So if you drive into work and need something to look at for 2 or 3 minutes, it'll hit your email inbox Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. And maybe you'll laugh, maybe you'll learn, it'll give you something to focus on, something you can control. And I wrote a book and I couldn't stop writing. So I'm still full of ideas. So my wife doesn't want to talk about them anymore. So I put them on paper instead.
Yeah, awesome. Good stuff, man. Hey, and thanks so much for joining me, everyone. It's an honor to have you. Yeah. And everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, listen to this stuff. If you're struggling right now, it's, and if you're in healthcare or anyone, if you're struggling really bad right now, reach out to someone, reach out to help, talk to someone. There's good people out there willing to help. I've seen that too many doctors commit suicide. It's terrible, so we like to focus on the positive, but that's a reality we're facing, and the burnout rate, and doing whatever we can, our little part here to help out. And also remember, when you go to the pharmacy, be nice to the pharmacists. They're working hard. They have a family. They have stuff they want to do. Doctors and nurses, show some respect to them and be kind, and know they're probably sleep deprived, stressed out, and dealing with management and all this other stuff. And
pharmacists, be nice to your doctors and nurses. They're all stressed out too. We're all in this together.
Yeah, we're all in together. We're all in together. We all have to be nice to each other and kind of smile together and shake our heads, say, wow, this is a wild system. But yeah, there's so many good people on all sides. So everyone, Have a great weekend. Cory, thanks for joining me. Go enjoy the Arizona sun. Hopefully to be out, I hope to be out visiting soon. So we'll talk to you then.
All right, thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.